body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoga Vairocana Mahamudra Mani Padma Chavalaya Pravartaya Please join us in Yegel.
Chi sim quim yang ne shi bang sam se che mang chal he sang jo il che pultaya ajung chi sim quim yang ne si bang sam se che mang cha he sang jo il che dalmahaya ajung chi sim quim yang ne si bang sam se che mang Chalhe Sangju Ilche Sangaya Aju.
And now in English. I go for refuge to the Buddha
I go for refuge to the Buddha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
Um,
I will cultivate.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
and realize the great way.
and realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma
I go for refuge to the Dharma
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings
I will penetrate the teachings
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha
I go for refuge to the Sangha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Please return now for a shorter period of meditation. And when we come back, Hayun will be offering a Dharma talk on the Bodhisattva, Kwanseum Posal. So please continue to join us.
please follow along with some mindful exercises, really focusing on the tactile nature of each time one part of our body touches another. First, our hands coming together, feeling your fingers, palms of your hands. We reach up, touch our scalp, feel the hair follicles moving. Embodying this practice. Then we feel our earlobes pull down slightly. Feel your entire ear stretch. Then leaning forward, your hands in front of you. You can do this from a chair or from a mat. Stretching your back. And then up, hands over our heads, feeling our spine stretch like it's attached to a string from the ceiling. And then putting our hands forward on the floor or table in front of us. Now please listen deeply as Ma-Un reads us a beautiful passage from the Dhammapada. Okay, I'll read it. Let me put my microphone on. We're getting more technologically advanced by the day here at the temple. There. Okay, I will read it. Close your eyes. Deep attention. The wise harm no one. They are the masters of their bodies, and they go to the boundless country. They go beyond sorrow. Those who seek perfection keep watch by day and night till all desires vanish. Welcome in from the 10 directions, everyone. I'm Hayun, and it is a strikingly beautiful day at the temple. Snow is falling gently. There's little bubbles trying to emerge from the pond, from the aeration system. I just heard a bird cooing in the distance. So much suffering in the world, and yet still so normal and so regular. each day when we pay attention. As Maum said, my focus today, well, I got a ranging focus, but the Bodhisattva who I wanted to focus on is called Kwanseum Posal. Most of us know her. She's on a little altar next to me. Kwanseum Posal, also known as Avalokiteshvara. You see she has a lot of hands. A lot of hands. She is known as having 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands, so that she can see the suffering in the world, and that she can also respond to the suffering in the world. And I thought there could be no better bodhisattva to focus on than Avalokiteshvara today. It is said of Kwanseum Posal that she hears all the cries in the world. Just imagine how many cries she's been hearing lately. I've learned saw a little chant called Namu Kwanseum Sir Yinpusa. And what it says is, I honor the one who receives all the sounds in the world. Gosh, it was so nice to finally this week see in Washington a memorial for all the 400,000 people who have died in the United States of COVID. And that number only multiplies exponentially when we look around the world. I looked in the New York Times and it said at this point 2.1 million people have died in the world from COVID to this point. So it was beautiful when they did a moment of silence. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to join with me in a moment of silence for all of those who have passed from this horrible disease. There's something nourishing about remembering them, as painful as it might be. You know, when I read Buddhist stories, I always like to look for the lessons that they teach us today, rather than just looking at it as history. It's important that there are people who do that too, but for me, I'm always looking for what they can resonate with us today. There's one fellow that I wanted to talk about. I know Haju Sunim has talked about him too, but I think his story deserves special merit today. He was a monk in Korea who lived in the 19th century, and his name was Giorgio. And he was quite the character. He went to the monastery at a young age, and right away the teachers saw that this was a kid with real potential. So as he grew through his teens and his 20s, he became quite the sort of novice teacher. And people would come up to him and say, "Oh, Kyung-hyo, wow, great job on that talk last week. That was really wonderful. It inspired me." And, you know, I guess until you get to be a great master, you're always sort of affected by that kind of praise, that it's something it's hard not to get sort of puffed up about it, right? Like, oh, I really am a good teacher. I know what I'm doing. So he was a little bit full of himself, but he was still a really good teacher, and he was very young. So, you know, he was growing. And So one day he got a call from an old teacher of his who was in the large city, Seoul, and that teacher wanted him to come visit. And so when you're a student at the monastery, if your teacher says, come visit, you do that. So he packed up his bags, and as he was heading out of the monastery, he saw someone near the kitchen chopping cabbage, and he's like, oh, he was so grateful that that person was chopping cabbage. But there was a part of him that was like, but I'm Kyung-hyo, and I'm pretty cool because I'm a good teacher. And then he passed another room, and there was a monk who was deep into memorization, and there was a little candle, and he was memorizing the sutras, and Kyung-hyo looked in, and he was very grateful for that monk. But he's like, but still, I'm Kyung-hyo, and I'm a good teacher. And people really flock to me. So it was a 2-day trip, so he had to stop in this little village on his way to the big city. And it's a village he stayed in before, and generally at that point, if someone was a known sort of Buddhist monk and a good speaker, they kind of rolled out the red carpet for the monks who went in because the lay people really supported the monks, and that was sort of their job. Not like us today where we're all into meditation. They supported the monks in their practice. So he walked into this village expecting sort of, not like a hero's welcome, but a little like that. And so he looked around and he couldn't find anybody. And he's looking into windows and hello, hello? Nobody answered. And he's like, what is going on with this town? So finally he got to a window and he's like banging on the door and looking in the window, peering in. And he sees this person, and the person had like wide eyes and terror in their eyes. And they said, go away, smallpox, go away. And he backed up, and as he was backing up, he fell flat onto the ground on his back with terror. At that point, he could smell the bodies, and he looked over, and he could see piles of bodies from the town. And he was terrified, and he ran so fast, and he ended up not being able to make it back to the monastery. So he stayed in a barn that night, and he just shivered all night long. And he knew he had to do something. So he went the next day to a little hermitage right at the outskirts of the grounds of the monastery. And he committed himself to deeply reflecting on life and death, and to see if he could see the nature of life and death in any real way. And suddenly his old life seemed very flaccid, very like, oh gosh, I can't believe I was like that. It seems so trivial that he would think like, oh, I'm a good teacher. And so he stayed at this little hermitage, and he had an attendant with him who brought his meals, prepared his meals, went down to the village to get vegetables, shaved his head, and sort of groomed him. But really, Kyung-hyo spent all day, for days and weeks and months, just in meditation because of what he had seen. And one day, his novice who was with him went down to the village to pick up some vegetables, and he saw a farmer there, and they greeted each other, and the farmer was like, what's up with that monk of yours? He just never comes out. He's like not doing anything of any use for anybody. And the novice was quite upset and quite offended. He's like, what do you mean? My master is looking for the meaning of all things. And the layman Yi said, he's just like a cow with no nostrils. Well, at that point, the novice just turned like 4 shades of red. He was so angry. He couldn't get it out of his head. So he ran back to the monastery. So that afternoon, as he was shaving Kyung-hyo's head and feeding him his meal, Kyung-hyo was like, is there something wrong? He was like, I just was so upset today. This farmer offended you. He said something really derogatory. And Kyung-hyo said, what did he say? He says, you're like a cow with no nostrils. And at that moment, boom, Kyung-hyo awakened, had a dramatic enlightenment experience. And he went on to still be a great teacher, because obviously we know about him today. But the one thing about Kyung-hyo that's fascinating is he never lost that humility. He actually hated the crowds. He hated people saying, oh, you're a really good teacher. And in fact, later in his life, he just fled the monastery and lived a very sort of anonymous life among the people. And, you know, I'm touched by that story for numerous reasons. The first reason I'm struck by that story, well, I think that a lot of people focus on the enlightenment piece. You know, it is a koan like the cow with no nostrils and how that awakened him, that statement. And that's fascinating. But what struck me was before that. When Kyung-hyo first experienced the terror of witnessing that scene of disease, it's not so dissimilar. We don't see the bodies, but we do see body bags. He saw the terror in the person's eyes. We don't get to see the terror when people are being taken to the hospital. We like to think that Avalokiteshvara can hear their cries. But what struck me about Kyung-hyo's story most is what I call Kyung-hyo's choice. He could have just fled and said, I'm done with this Buddhism stuff. This isn't giving me any answers, and it's just, I'm going back to my life and building a life as a farmer or some sort of merchant and just putting this out of my head, because obviously it's not working for me right now, because it's not meeting what I need in the very moment. That was choice one. Choice two, which is a choice that a lot of us choose, which is repression. He could have just, you know, taken some time out and then gone back to his life. And he would have still been Kyung-hyo, the really great teacher, and someone who would rise in fame and notoriety. Could have chosen that. Instead, what Kyung-hyo chose was a life of deep reflection and a period of withdrawal to really reflect. And when I think of Kyung-hyo's story, it touches me because I really believe that we're all in that space right now, where if we're going to get through this together, it's a point of deep reflection and deep expression with each other. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said to me, Hayun, I'm just so intensely lonely now. And it really resonated, because no matter how many people we live with, or if we live alone, I think it's so easy to feel those feelings of loneliness now. We've lost so much of the fabric together of what makes us whole and one and gives us such sustenance and happiness by not being together. We all feel that every day. So I really thought this week about loneliness and about how it relates to our story and Kyung-hyo's story. And I found this I wanted to read to you. Obviously there's the part about missing people, but part of it is a reflection of ourselves and maybe our lack of seeing clearly that now is a time for deep reflection. So this says, part of our loneliness has to do with the lack of depths we allow ourselves to reflect on about ourselves and the world. So we end up leaving out a lot of our real nature. Pain, confusion, wildness, our seeking nature. We tell stories about what we've been up to that capture almost nothing of the truth of who we are. We're not lying when we do that, but we're in some ways very deep down kind of ashamed of the gap between what we see in ourselves and that part that we share with others. Most of us have been on a lot of Zoom calls lately, and I think that kind of resonates for those of us who are on Zoom a lot, is you can kind of share a lot of stuff and never really get to the heart of what matters in our lives and what unites us with ourselves and with the world around us. And it's almost like social media is a conundrum because we go there to seek out human connection, and so oftentimes it leaves us really dry and lacking. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the deep reflection that Kyung-hyo had. Obviously, we don't really have the option of going to a hermitage, most of us, in a monastery, and we certainly don't have the novice monk around to feed us our meals and shave our head. That would be nice, but we're kind of left to our own devices about what that really means. So I wanted to just go into a little bit about my thoughts about what can really create that deep reflection in our lives. The first thing that I thought about is trying to become one with the insentient beings around us. So in the Song of Meditation, we talk about rocks, trees, rivers, mountains, clouds, sky. You know, we don't have a lot of mountains in Michigan, but we do have a lot of rocks. So I wanted to show you, I have a rock that's really special to me. Hold it up to the camera so you can see my rock. I am a rock collector, and I love rocks. I love the way that they sort of convey a permanence and an impermanence all at once, because they seem so solid and unchanging, and yet you can only see by the soft edges of this how much it's been changed by Lake Michigan, and how much it's been affected by the world around it. So that's just one thing. It's just to take a look at the things around you that are solid and that are impermanent, but give a connection to you in a real way. Trees, oh my gosh, going for a walk now, so different than in the summer. It's been said that when Zen practice is like the tree in winter, very bare, quiet, right? I mean, if you go into the woods now, you might hear a stray bird, but you're not going to hear much. It's silent. And the snow crusted on it presents an outline that's just magical. So I encourage you to get outside to the best of your abilities. And if you can't, find a focal point of a tree that you can just look at out your window and look at it each day. See how it changes. Someone was telling me that, you know, she's been noticing the cups on her shelf each day, that they're all so, you know, they sit on the same shelf, the same cup in the same place every day. And she's like, you know, those cups must know each other by now because they're really there every day. But I was touched by that because I felt like she was really noticing her surroundings. I also wanted to share with you this picture. This is an artist who I studied when I was in school, and I haven't thought about him in a long time. His name is Giorgio Morandi, and I'm going to put it a little closer. He barely left his apartment ever, and most of his pictures were exactly like this. They were just the jugs and jars on his counter. And if you look up Giorgio Morandi, what you'll see is he has like many, many pictures, just like this one. And I love the fact that he found such sustenance with the insentient beings around him, that captivated him. And so it, you know, it kept away any feelings of longing for something outside of his world as it was right then. So I think he's a good example of someone who just captures that insentient being and that relationship to insentient beings. The second piece of deep reflection, I think, is becoming one with ourselves. I'm reading this book which I highly recommend. It's called You Belong, and it's a call for connection. And it's by a woman named Sabine Selassie. And she describes herself on the cover as nerdy, black, immigrant, tomboy, Buddhist weirdo. Which is awesome, you know, can really sum up a lot. But what she says in this book is really essentially that, yes, there are those institutional barriers where people try to prevent us from belonging. But, you know, just by being alive, we belong. And that we really need to capture that in our own lives. She had one beautiful quote from the Buddha, which I wanted to read, about the importance of embodiment and the importance of really, really being with ourselves and being one with ourselves. The Buddha said, "There is one thing that when cultivated and regularly practiced leads to deep spiritual intention, to peace, to mindfulness, and clear comprehension, to vision and knowledge, to a happy life here and now, and to the culmination of wisdom and awakening. And what is that one thing? It is mindfulness centered in the body." So notice he didn't say just mindfulness. He said mindfulness centered in the body. And Celine says, often we don't appreciate our bodies because we don't feel them. We have ideas about the body, but we don't actually sense our bodies. And if we can't sense the body, we can't belong to it. And she talks about the difference between when we talk about embodiment, thinking about embodiment. I don't know about you, but I do that sometimes of like, oh, feel my feet on the floor. Well, I'm thinking about feeling my feet on the floor. But there's something much, much deeper about closing your eyes, and I urge you to do it right now. Whether your feet are crossed or whether your soles are on the floor, don't think about them being on the floor. Actually feel the tactile sense of what your skin feels like through your clothes on the floor. Rub your fingers together now. Feel that tactile sense of what it's like to rub your fingers together. Now feel the breath coming through your nostrils. Each filament in your nostril, feel it coming in cool and warming as it goes through your nostrils. Finally, feel your breath. Feel your stomach expand through your waistline of your pants. And then compresses again. I urge you, when you're meditating, to take a few moments before you really dive in and do that practice of embodying yourself. I think that what you'll find is that it's easier a lot of the time to then approach your meditation rather than just going from what you've been doing before to sitting on your cushion or your chair, to really try to embody yourself. The final thing about my deep reflection thoughts is to become one with people who listen from the heart. We all have a lot of people who we're very casual with. How are you doing? Well, I'm fine. How are you? And we don't really get to the core of who we are. And I think that that adds to our sense of loneliness. Take a trip to the right side of your brain. Go to where the creativity is, the music appreciation, the imagination. Think about doing something like you wouldn't think about doing. One thing I did this winter that I love is I took an art class. I mean, this is the kind of thing I would say, I don't have time for that. And I finally did it, and it is so incredibly nourishing. I can't even tell you. So I really urge you, whether it's that or whether it's just connecting with people on a deeper level who are in your family or on the phone or on a Zoom call. But try to be around people who are just delightfully strange, like we are, and see what happens, and see how when you share your heartfelt needs, you can open them up too. And then you have a real conversation, and that creates belonging, and that's where the place of our deep reflection lies. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about deep expression, because once we start to really center ourselves, find that place of deep reflection, we're then in a capacity to really be Kwanseum Posal, to be the person who can actually hear with compassion the cries of the world. Express gratitude to everyone in your life. I don't come in contact with that many people. The temple is my pod, and even the temple doesn't have very many people around these days. So we anxiously await your return. But one thing I have taken up, which I really recommend, it's a wonderful practice for me, is that on those few occasions that I have to actually go to the grocery store, I don't go to the big ones. I'll go to like an Argus Farm Stop or a Arbor Farms. But I always take time to thank the cashier because I feel like they're doing really courageous work doing that. So the other couple weeks ago, I was at Arbor Farms, and I said thank you to the cashier. I said, I'm really kind of blown away by your courage in helping us like this. And you know what happened is she just started crying, and she said, it's so hard to come in every day. It's just, I feel like I'm putting myself in danger, but I know it's important work. So we just really shared a deep moment. And so I think that we can never express enough gratitude, especially in the times we're living in. We talked about this a little, but really listening from the heart and speaking from the heart, not just reacting to what's been said, but taking it in, doing that deep reflection before a word comes out of your mouth, because sometimes when you pause, it doesn't even need words. Sometimes just breathing is enough. Thirdly, this is about believing in ourselves and believing that we belong in whatever environment we're in, that there's nothing that's above us, there's nothing that's below us, that our presence is meaningful. This little art class I'm taking, there's 50 people in this class, and a lot of them know each other, but I feel like, you know, I am just as strange as anyone else in that room, and quirky, and we have a lot of fun. At the end, we show our little artwork that we've done, and we all just have a great time with it. So I feel like, yeah, it's important to just believe that you belong, and most of the time, if people are really true and you want to be around them, they accept you for who you are. And I think that our stories, if we believe that our stories will resonate, it prompts other people to open their heart, right? Then they share their stories, and then suddenly we're opening the rooms in our heart to what's sad, what might be angry, what might be self-hating or self-doubting. And those rooms, once they start opening and we see the light in them, we can start cleaning them out together. And it's you and I and everyone else who's in this together with us, doing that sort of special deep listening and deep responding work together, rather than just being sucked into that sense of that you have to respond in a very minimal way. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people in your workplace that you have to respond in a minimal sort of way, because that's just the way our lives are these days. But if we're really to do that deep reflection that Kyung-hyo talked about, it's about more than that. It's about being a deep expression, too, for other people. And I think that the important thing for us in the temple is that we want to be that for you as well. So if you are feeling lonely, if you're feeling like you don't have your bearings about you, we do have a number of really nice groups that are meeting now. Obviously this is a larger group, but we have some smaller groups that you might be interested in. The first one is a Wednesday evening group that meets. We do a little meditation, a little chanting, and then we have a subject matter from the Song of Meditation that we all sort of speak from the heart on, and we talk about ourselves, and we talk about our weeks, we talk about our lives. And the second is a group that meets on Thursday mornings. And what time does that meet? 9:30. And that group is studying the way of the Bodhisattva. And they're using a book by Pema Chodron. And you would be welcome to join that group as well. So they're both really nice opportunities for you to dive in. We have a study group that's a practice period that's starting that I can talk about afterwards a little bit more. So there's lots of room for you to be able to jump in and add your voice, because your voice is really meaningful to us. I wanted to end with a story from the Buddha. The Buddha says, expel negative thoughts with thought and reflection. So we sometimes see the Buddha as this sort of figure who talks in big ways. You've got to get rid of that negative thought. But what the Buddha's saying right here that's very important is not just repress that negative thought, not just move on, but actually through thought and reflection, really focus on that negative thought. And then it can drop off like water from a lotus leaf, he said. That's what Kyung-hyo did. And I think in this time, that's what we're being called to do. The final thing I wanted to read to you before we get to a little song, which is a beautiful song. I wanted to read something. I am really drawn. Here's my old book with some scripture in it. It's really well worn. It's like a Velveteen Rabbit kind of book. But what I look for, I think sometimes we look at the Buddha as the neuropsychologist or psychiatrist in chief or something, looking at our brains and how they operate. And he is that. And sometimes we look at him as this incredibly charismatic self-help guru, and he is that. But what I like to look for with the Buddha are those moments, and they're scattered all over the scriptures, where he is just really lovingly trying to help people. That's what he devoted his life to, obviously. But I have one where this group of 500 friends, I don't know how there's 500 friends, but there were 500 friends who decided that they heard the Buddha and they were joining the monastery, joining the Sangha. So they went, and they were in it for a few months, and they were like, oh, I'm really lonely. I'm really sad. I really have these cravings. I really can't do this anymore. So they were unable to control themselves, and so they decided, well, we're just going to have to leave. And the Buddha, surveying the world, as he often did, he perceived their distress and immediately understood the cause. Indeed, like a mother watches over her only child, or a one-eyed man protects his single eye, the Buddha watched over his disciples, helping them, whenever necessary, to subdue their difficulties. He resolved with compassion and wisdom to help them and to lead them to arhatship, which is awakening. So, I have a little song. This past week, I don't know whether many of you knew this, but it was Haju Sunam's birthday. She is 77 years young. And we had a little party here because we have to be little. We had Rupal on the line. We sang songs. If you have a birthday and you'd like us to sing to you, we would be happy to do that. And in fact, you should know that we know happy birthday in Spanish, French, Spanish, and Lithuanian. So you can have a happy birthday song in 4 languages if you actually call. But we also have a new resident, not so new, but a newish resident, Marina Bosana, who put together this beautiful video for Haju, which I think embodies the love that I wanted to portray in this little talk about Kwanzaa and Posal and Kyung-hyo. So I wanted to play for you. We have it queued up. It's going to be a little bit of a gap. as you know, with technology, and then then you'll see this little tribute to Haju.
I just want to bring a little joy, make a happy noise. I can't hold the weight of the world, but I can carry a tune to rejoice in the rain, smile in the face of pain. Oh, life's no easy game, but I choose to bring a little joy. The system's hardly working, every summer's getting worse. They'll tell you what you don't deserve in lines that they rehearse. But sisters, we are waiting, in the rocky ground we work. My hammer is a chorus, and my shovel is a verse. I just want to bring a little joy, make a happy noise. I can't hold the weight of the world, but I can carry a tune to rejoice in the rain, smile in the face of pain. Oh, life's no easy game, but I choose to bring a little joy.
Yay! Happy birthday, Haju. If you have birthday greetings to send to Haju, you don't need to have a muck talk or a one-girl band. Just send them along, and I'm sure she'd gratefully receive them. She's not here with us today because she is socially distancing with her daughters from afar. But yeah, so I think that's it from here except for announcements, right? Which I'm passing the ball to me to do. So announcements. Next week, actually this week the program is starting, but next week we begin our on Zoom follow-up practice period on Before We Were White that Emily Howard is doing for us. She's going to be doing it, and it's really going to be great, I think. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm a part of it. So I encourage you to join. You can find out more about it in the e-bulletin. And even if you don't get to sign up today, you can, it's one of those classes that you could take throughout the week if you're interested. And the people who are putting it on said that, there's a cost involved, but they don't want it to be a financial burden for anyone. So really cost is not an object, they said. So if you'd like to join up, the program is called Before We Were White, and it is in our e-bulletin. And the second thing I wanted to tell you is that on February 14th, it is our Lunar New Year. So we will be doing some special chanting. That's a Sunday service, and we're going to dedicate it to the Lunar New Year and do some special chanting for world peace that day. Is there another week, Ma'um, that's all chanting for world peace?
The whole week after.
That whole week after that, we're going to be doing special chanting services, and we're going to either do them by Zoom or live stream, but somehow we're going to put you in because this is a special year for us to chant for world peace, world safety, world health, just the benefit of our world in general. So we invite you to join with that. Of course, I mentioned before the Wednesday evening sittings. You are always welcome, but because it's on Zoom, we need to know beforehand. It's not like this where you can just tune in. So let us know, Ann Arbor Zen Temple @gmail.com, or call us at 734-761-6520, and we will plug you in. And there's, of course, the study group on Thursday morning, too. So with that, anything I'm missing that you can think of? Finally, I just wanted to say, as we always do, a really big thank you to those of you who have supported our annual appeal. It is allowing the temple to go forward and carry on the Dharma in these difficult times. And so we give you a deep bow. Thank you. And to all of you, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week, same time, same station. Be well, be healthy, be safe.